Okay, it looks like it's 2 after the hour, so I think we're ready to get started here. We appreciate everyone taking time out of their day to meet with us. This is Softvision Suite's monthly product webinar, and this month we are focused on forecast accuracy. So to start off here with our agenda, to go through, we have some quick introductions of our customer success team. I have a few housekeeping items that we're going to go through, and then we'll begin with an overview of some main screen concepts before we hand it over to Stuart, who will be leading us through a live demonstration of the key screens related to forecast accuracy. And then we also have some time saved at the end here for any Q&A. So this is our customer success team that runs these monthly webinars, and we are here to ensure your success and help you maximize your use of the tool. Feel free to reach out to us directly if you have any questions, or to our customersuccess@softvision.com email. And we also are always looking for any suggestions you may have on webinars. A few housekeeping items here. Like always, we will be recording webinars, which will be available on our YouTube channel. So if you search for Cognizant Softvision at YouTube, you will see a playlist of our webinars here. We will have everybody on mute right now just to reduce any feedback, but please feel to enter any questions or comments you have in the Q&A window, which is located at the bottom of your screen here. And then we also do have 10 to 15 minutes saved at the end to go through those questions. Okay, so I'm going to hand it over then to Stuart, who will start off with discussing forecast accuracy.
Thanks, Megan. You know, accurate forecasts are important for order fulfillment because your forecasts flow into master scheduling so you can make those buys. So this way, your forecast has to be accurate so you can make those buys and avoid back orders and look at your inventory buy plan. That's the overall forecast and also the sales curve, how the demand is coming in by week. When we look at forecast accuracy, there is a hierarchy. We could look at the top level, either offer or even season, and go down to SKU. It's more accurate at the top levels than as you go down. But for a lot of companies, they look at their forecast accuracy at a product level. Now, there's a number of different things which could affect the forecast, and this is only a few of them. There's probably a lot more of these, and you could probably think of a lot more. But there are events and promotions that will affect the forecast. Seasonality definitely affects it. Any sales trends, things that are now hot in the market, things that are starting to sell better, and also things that are starting to drop off. Any price changes, if you're going in there and reducing the price or raising the price, that will affect the forecast. Assortment changes. So in a particular category and subcategory, you may add products or take away products. And because of that, that could affect the overall forecast of each of those products because you may get some cannibalization from one product to another. The other important dynamic is inventory availability. If the product's not in stock, that could definitely affect your forecast. So that's another thing to look at. And also new versus repeat. New items are a lot harder to forecast than repeat items. Good thing is our application shows most actually of these different fields, either in product level forecast or in maps. So those are columns that you should definitely look at when you're reviewing your forecast. Now, there's been a number of different surveys and benchmarks that's been done for forecast error. So when we talk about forecast accuracy, most companies look at forecast error and their error rate. So here's an average of forecast error by industry, and it does change by industry. Most of our Softvision customers, I'd say, is consumer packaged goods. So you could see here, it's about a 39% error rate, and that's at a product level. There have been other surveys, and it shows that that error rate is between 39 and 52%, which seems high. So just understand this as a benchmark, and then we try to improve that. And to measure this, most companies use this formula. It's mean absolute percentage error, which is basically forecast minus sales divided by sales, and the absolute value of that. So you look at both under and over forecasts. Now, there is something that could help your forecast accuracy and decrease errors, and that's demand sensing. Many people use demand planning, which is basically setting up your plan, looking at past years, looking at other informations to set it. Demand sensing is looking at current demand signals. In other words, any knowledge you may have from marketing or merchandising, anything that's currently happening. So demand sensing is important to do. Other things is you could look at weekly or monthly forecasts, but demand sensing looks at those daily forecasts. Now, we don't show the daily forecast, but you could run and should run product variance. Okay, that's one example of this. So once you start to get actual sales, you would look at product variance to be able to go in and make those adjustments. And studies have shown that this demand sensing reduces the forecast error by up to 10%. So now I'm going to hand it over to Linda, who's going to speak about macros.
So thanks, Stuart. A key element to managing your forecast accuracy is ensuring that the macro data in your offer setup screens are the most current information you have, both pre and post season. So our macros are used to derive the calculations within the dashboard, the metrics that you're using in the forecast screens. So whether you're using mailings, orders, or square inch metrics, those are all being calculated off of that macro data. So pre-season, we recommend working with your marketing partners to get the most current updated information and develop some form of a communication plan that they are telling you if any of those items change, especially when it comes to orders and revenue. So another, talk to your creative team. They can probably also provide to you how many offers, if it's a mailing, a paper mailing, they can tell you how many offers that they're requested to be printed. Finance teams can also be a source of that data because they're usually having to keep track of that information for accounting purposes and tie out paper, postage, creative costs. So they will also be keeping track of that post-season. So post-season, you want to also be sure to close or inactivate your offers. So key steps to do that to ensure your historical offers are accurate is to, one, make sure you change your planning status to 9, update your macro to match your actuals, and then uncheck your active offer flag. So, and depending on the volume that you have, you might want to look at that maybe again further down the road, but again, those are the key steps. So another element that we talk about for managing macros is publishing. So we want to make sure that you establish a protocol or some type of SOP for your publishing process. Our recommendation is that people publish daily, but you also want to save off a version as needed. So whether that version be weekly, whether that version be monthly, we want to make sure that there is a version being saved off. And when you create that version, you also have the opportunity to identify version type. Version type is key if you want to be able to determine are there different points in time in the offer life cycle that you want to be able to measure forecast accuracy. Examples might be pre-season, certain points in time, X number of weeks before a book mails. It could be when buyers finish doing assortment planning and maybe a preliminary forecast. Other points, most people want to save off a version that identifies the plan type. What was my forecast version when the plan was put to bed? You might save off versions when a forecaster is done with the initial forecasting and they turn it over to the planners to start managing in season. Other examples of version types if you want to keep track of projection accuracy at different points in time. So when do you, early when projections just start towards maybe when they first kick off and you go live. So these are all snapshots that can be used to measure forecast accuracy. So I'm going to turn it over to Janine now, who is going to talk about product variants.
Thanks, Linda. One of the most important tools that we have is the product variance screen. This is something we recommend you have on your main dashboard so that you can launch right into it. It's critical
Janine,
to review.
hold on a minute.
I'm
I think
sorry.
I'm showing the wrong screen. Either I
Oh, okay.
skipped a screen or you would go do publishing.
And we did talk about
We
that.
did talk about
Stuart.
that. I'm sorry. I was a little slow on the thing. Go ahead, Janine.
No problem, no problem. It's critical to review this since it shows the first indications of actual results. It gives you the difference between your current working forecast and the projection. This can be run manually on demand, and typically what you're doing is you're keying in a percent range. Typically that time frame between the offer first being active to right before the offer goes into auto project. And then you'll also key in a percent variance. So you want it to, for example, look at, give me all of the products that are performing 30% in a variance to my forecast. You also have the option to have this run daily automatically for you, and that just requires us setting up a script with those values for you. So if you would like to do that or haven't done that, just reach out to your customer success consultant. The data that retrieves on the screen will show you the under and over units based on how the projection is variant to your forecast. It's quick to look at those items that are overperforming as well as underperforming. And you can decide if you want to chase the products that are performing above your forecast. You can sort and then, excuse me, start to go through and figure out why. You know, why is this performing differently? And you need to do the research. So what we do from here is you double click the item that you're on, and it brings you right into your product level forecasting screen. This is something, it's a very familiar screen for most everyone here, which has lots of information for you to do that analysis. So when we're in the product level forecasting screen, you're looking at that current offer. So when I'm asking myself, why is this performing differently? Well, maybe I should take a look at the different versions that we've taken, the snapshots. Were there budget changes that happened? It could be my curve. Does the curve not make sense for this particular product? Did we put it on sale? Is the price different? Did the pagination change for me? So those are all the questions that you want to ask yourself. Once you've made a decision, do I need to adjust this forecast? So then we can make those changes to the current offer that you're looking at and perhaps make adjustments for any future offers that the product is in. So other pieces of information available to you on here that's critical that I think are sometimes underutilized is the history forecast graph. This will show you your previous performance on the item as well as your forecast go forward and what your on-hand quantities are. You also can access curve analysis from the screen. You can access your mix percent, which are also key to making sure you've got an accurate forecast, which we covered last month. And you can also look at like products. Once I've decided if I'm making any of these adjustments, I can go ahead and do a live save and publish within this screen so that the results are immediate within master scheduling. And at that point, you can make the decisions that you need to, whether it's going to be purchasing more product or changing delivery dates. The next screen that we have for accuracy in the, oops, there we go. We have the multi-offer forecast screen. So what's great about this screen is it allows you to bring in several versions of the same offer. So you could bring in your working version, one of those saved snapshots that you have, as well as your actuals. You get to compare how the offer is doing based against your macro. It also gives you a view from the top level of the offer as well as down through the hierarchy. You can drill down from category, subcategory to product and even SKU. The other option that you have in here is you could compare your current offer with the previous offer. Maybe it's the same offer from last year. You can do that as well. This screen is great for making budget changes. So if you've had an increase in your revenue, or I would say revenue is probably the most common that's used on here, though you have several metrics down at the bottom that you can choose to use. But if you've had, say, a budget increase for a particular offer, I can go in here and change that 2.9 million to 4 million, and then it will roll a weighted save all the way down to the product SKU level. This way, it's a quick way to make sure that you have the most current information available when you're in and looking at your products in PLF. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Stuart.
Thanks, Janine. There are a number of different reports that you could run to measure forecast accuracy. One of them is this product level history report. This report will show you the sales, or at least the forecast, for a saved version. So let's say I saved an initial version, or this is an in-season version. It'll show me the units and also show the actual and projected units. And so you could easily see in these columns how it compares. And you could run this at any time as long as you have the saved initial version. It's good to do that. This has a lot of information like units, revenues, scheduler, category, subcategory, a lot of different fields. So it's really good just to be able to look at a product level at these 3 different fields. Okay, and again, where you see units, that's the units for whatever version you're bringing in. Now, if you put this into Excel and export it, you could use this formula. So this is this mean absolute percentage error formula we had, and we could put that in here, and here's our forecast error. So that's our units minus actual divided by actual. And we could see this forecast error. This happens to be a particular subcategory. So if we look here, we could see that the average of this is 37%. Again, you might put other spins on this. Here we had units of 8, but it actually did 4. That's 100%. That's a large error, not a large unit error. But again, that, and depending on the price of that, that could actually be a missed opportunity. So again, take a look at these and run that report, put it into Excel, and then take a look at that. Okay, and it's important to go in and measure your forecast errors so that you could learn from past mistakes. You could see any systematic errors that you might have done. And so basically just to learn why your forecast was so different from actual. Another report is this pub product compare. So this report is similar to the other report, the product level history, but this is at a SKU level, and it'll look at your saved units, and you would save a particular version against the comparable units. Comparable would be your last published forecast, and actual, excuse me, and this will give you sales by week. So this will show you a week begin date, will show you sales by week, by SKU, for these 3 different versions that are here. So again, this is a bit more detailed, but will give you the ability to go in and take a look at those different forecasts by week. And the last report you could run is a SKU hot list by offer. So this report shows you a unit forecast for the offer. It's only available at a SKU level, but will show you your inventory position. So again, if inventory is important for determining your forecasts, you could run this. You would run and save this at start date. So you could see your forecast and your inventory position. So that way you could see if the inventory actually affected the forecast itself. And with that, I'm going to go to a sample dashboard and go through some of these screens. So here we are in marketing. If I go to offer performance, this is all of my active offers, all right? And you could sort by different fields here. I'm going to sort by % done to look at this particular offer. So this offer, you'll see the mail date, you'll see your macro units and revenue, okay? So again, when we say macro, this is information that you get from marketing. This is your plan. This could be when you're setting up the offer early, this could be whatever you had for last year. and make adjustments, but hopefully you have enough of that information. We also see actual units and revenue and projected units and revenue. So this offer is using the PROJ method. So it's taking a look at our actual revenue divided by our macro revenue and determining that we're close to about 20% done for this offer. Okay, and then that 20% done will be used on your products unless you happen to have another product curve that's set up. You could also see your plan revenue. This is your MAPS budget, whatever you had set up in MAPS, and your work revenue. So here, your work revenue is much higher than your macro. So again, at this point, you have to make the decision, what is correct? Do I need to pick up my macro, or do I need to reduce my work revenue? Again, that's a business decision. That will depend on how much information you have. For a lot of companies, I've seen that the work revenue, which is your latest working forecast, is usually a bit higher than your macro, because the macro and any actual offer will show you discounts. And a lot of times you can plan for those discounts in the future. And so sometimes your working forecast will be higher, but again, it shouldn't be that high. And that's where we set up the tolerance. Okay, if I right click, I could go to offer setup. And so offer setup is where I could go in and look at my macro information. I can make adjustments here if I need to make these adjustments. I could also set my plan status. So this is 20% done. We took this out of maps, so planning is complete. And then in this Proj Pub tab, so you set here your auto projection method. It would be PROJ or PRJ2, or maybe for seasonal PRJS. PROJ looks at the actual for the macro. PRJ2 looks at the actual curve week. So here we have set up create projections when offer percent done is greater than 10% at a product level. So once we hit 10%, we're going to start generating projections. And that's where we should start looking at product variance. Okay, at a SKU level, we have it later because a lot of times you don't sell those SKUs till later on. Now here you see send projection to master scheduling auto when it's 30% done. Seen this in different ranges from anywhere from 15% to 50%. Usually the average is about 20% done. Basically, this is where you're not making your forecast adjustments, but you're auto publishing. And so it would go in, take that projection, and move that to master scheduling. Again, it would be good to save a version at that point in time to just see how much that changes, because possibly you want to increase or decrease this. And a lot of this is also difference between when you could, order basically, and then how much time you have to go through each of these forecasts. But between 10% and 30%, it's your working forecast that's going to master scheduling. So you want to make sure that those forecasts are accurate. Here's a forecast version type. You have different types. This one's called in season. The save forecast version type is used for that report. That's a fairly new report, that Pub Project report that looks at those weekly sales and forecasts by SKU. And then you have your tolerance percent, your high and your low. So you want to make sure that your forecast is between the high and low, otherwise you won't be able to validate when you publish. Okay, now before I go to the publish screen, in administration is where you could set your forecast version types. So again, a lot of people, some people may set up a budget, which would be your original budget when you're creating those forecasts. Many do a drop date or start date. So once you start getting sales, you want to freeze those forecasts. And so that's where you could compare your forecast accuracy. There's others that you could do, like in season. That might be the working forecast that you publish every day, basically. But this is where you could go in and you could add new forecast version types to this. Let me go back to forecasting, or let me go to forecasting publish. So here's your publish screen. So you could see the offer, you see your high and low tolerance, you could see your forecast revenue, which is that working forecast, against your plan revenue, and you see my percent variance revenue. So it's 30%. So I should be able to validate and save and publish this. Now, if you right click, you could view version history. So this will show you the time and dates that these are set. So ideally, once you start setting up, you could have an initial version, you could have a drop version, and these are all the different versions that are there. Your -1 is the version that's going to master scheduling, okay? And that's basically, until we go to auto project, that's a copy of your latest in season here. Okay. Now, if I wanted to save a version, I would click here, Save. I would go to Validate Selected Offers, and hopefully it would pass, and it says it does pass, and then I would publish those selected offers. Okay. And then once I publish, I'm not going to do it here, but once I publish, I could then view the version history, and I would have a new save version. Okay. The other thing you could do is you could right click and scale offers. So here you see either revenue in units, here's our plan, and here's our forecast. You could go in there and you could adjust this. So if you want to take it down, I could go in there and maybe come in the middle and change it and update this and do this at this top level here. Or I could go into something like multi-offer forecast, okay? So if I go to multi-offer forecast comparison, I could bring in 3 different versions of the offer, or maybe another offer that's here. If I go to working, I could see my working version. I could bring in my projected version, and an initial version, or I could have brought in last year or another similar one, but I'm going to bring in this initial version that's here. Okay, so once I have these 3, I could click retrieve, and then I could see the information. This is by units, units average item index, which shows you number of products, units per thousand, units price, which will show you the average price. But I'm going to look at revenue. So here you can see, here's my overall forecast, working forecast, 2914. I could see here my plan revenue. That was my macro. And I could see that, and I could see the projected, and I could see my last save, which was my initial, let's say. And I see the percent complete. If I wanted to, I could go in and adjust this here. And then this will scale down. I could do a save, and it'll do a scaled save down at all the levels. It'll scale it to category, to subcategory, and then down to a product level. Okay? And it'll scale whatever change that I made there. I could also do something called apply weights. I could look at these 2 different versions and apply the weights between the 2. I don't have to keep this. I could make this, let's say, 60 and 40. And I could say, well, take 60% of the projection and 40% here and apply weights. And that's what it does. It goes in there and it gives you a blended forecast down at this level. All right. Now, when you go to save, you have a choice between a scaled save, which will scale it down to a product level, or a weighted save. And the weighted save would bring it down to a SKU level. And I don't know at this point if you would want to do a scaled save, particularly your whatever you set up here for your mix percent may be more accurate than you have here. Okay? So any questions on the publish screen or offer setup or multi-offer?
Yes, we did have a question come in. It's regarding the vendor order review screen.
Right.
They would like to know the difference between forecast volatility and forecast error column and how that relates to forecast accuracy in that vendor order review screen.
Yeah, in vendor order review, we're taking the sales. That's outside the scope of this, but we could cover it. That's taking the sales over a certain time period, and there are some parameters that are set to look at that: forecast volatility and forecast error. If you don't mind, I think that's something that we'll send afterwards. Okay,
Sure. Yeah.
so we don't cover it, but that is a good question because that is available in there, and it is a good metric and it is a good formula to take a look at.
Linda
Thanks.
did answer in the Q&A section, detailed answer to that. So
Okay.
that's out there also to refer to.
Okay, very good. All right, I'm going to go to forecasting and product variance. So product variance is set, you could set a script to run product variance each day, and then it would automatically populate the screen. You could also submit a job. So if you click submit job, you could set it and then run it here. So here you have your minimum percent complete. So you're saying at 5%, start running product variance, or the other ones, the other offer that we looked at started at 10%. We could run it through to 40%. And so the system will look at every offer between 5 and 40 and then run that variance report. That's how this works. But again, you're better off setting that up with a script. Your product variance percent, here it's 25%, so that'll show me any variance percent, 25% or more. If you wanted to look at more, you can change that to 20% or 10%. And then the version type is your work version, and then projection. Okay, and here you can see audit. Since this is set in a script to run every day, you could see that it'll show you the number of records that it finds. Okay, so here during this week there were no records, but during some of the other weeks it did find these records. When we say records, it's finding offers between this minimum and maximum. Okay, you could go in and put filters to filter to a particular offer, category or subcategory, or vendor, and it gives you a lot of information here. You have vendor status, category, subcategory, and then we have forecasted projected units and under units. The same with over. Over units is where you have your forecast, like here 2194, but we're projecting much less. So this is something where you're over forecasting. I like to look at under because I want to make sure that I'm capturing my demand and updating my forecast so that I don't have back orders. So here you see this item forecasted 846. We're projecting 1398. So we're under by 552 units, and that under percent is 39%. If I double click here, I could go into product level forecast. And when you go to PLF, it will show you the offer. It'll highlight the offer that you linked from, in this case from product variance. You could expand this to see all the different versions. So you could learn from here, what was my original forecast? Was it higher? Was it low? Was it high at one point and then I dropped it down for some reason? You could take a look at your metrics. If you're using, let's say, forecast per thousand, what about the comparable offer? Is that something that's in line? Is that something that was accurate from the beginning? Page percent, this might be on a larger page, and that may be why it's doing better. So again, all the information that you could find here, average price and weighted price, is the price the same? Okay. And demand curve, is the curve correct? And the other thing you could look at here is any offer product comments. So in this case, this was featured on the web. We didn't reduce the price, but it was featured. So maybe that's why this is doing better. So just go in there, take a look at these, especially at this high level, and figure out why your forecast is less than your actual and projected. All right. And again, you could look at other things like the history forecast graph. This one's, hold on one second, not a great example, but here you can see if your forecast dropped down, it may be that you didn't have inventory. Okay. And then you could also see in the future, here's my forecast, how's my inventory position? Do I have enough? Okay. But before you do that, you might want to go in and adjust these forecast units. Okay. So if I go in there, do I want to make it as high as this? Maybe I want to come in the middle. Maybe I want to make it 1100. But again, that's something that you would need to decide, okay, to make that change. You could also look at curve analysis. And we could have looked at this also in multi-offer forecast at the offer level to make sure our offer was correct. But here you could see your, take a look and see your accumulated here against here, whether this is a good curve or not, all right? You could swap the curve. So this way you could go in and say, well, is this a better curve? Maybe I should apply this curve. Maybe I should apply a different curve, a revised curve. And then you could go in here and you could go in to swap the curve and save it. Again, that's something you'll have to look at looking at those particular products. Okay, so after you make that change, you could do a save, you could do a save and publish. Okay, but you really want to make sure to update this because you see here, auto publish is off. So until we reach 30%, this forecast is what's going to master scheduling to determine your buys. So you really want that to be accurate. You could go to the next, and it asks you, do you want to set the status to done? So it'll then check done on the variance report as you go through. And this way, it's going to work down the list of product variants. I'm going to go one more to show another example. So here's the product. 154 is a forecast, but we're projecting 404. If I expand this, I could take a look at my actual sales. Now look at the weighted price here. We had planned it for 89 cents. It's coming through at 45 cents. So a lot of times, if your forecast is off and you're doing better, take a look at the weighted price. This somehow is on sale, or maybe it was unusual demand. I need to check order detail to see where these are coming through. Maybe this is only on temporary sale for now, and so I don't increase this as much. But again, it's good to go in there and expand these so you could look at this weighted price for actual sales. Okay, and when I X off here, you can see that it's set this status to done. So again, you can work through the list, go in, but it is something, especially early in the offer, that you want to check every day. It's the first indication of sales for these products. So it is important to go in there and check these. I'm going to go into reports. There are these 3 reports that we spoke about. This product level history report, I have one here called forecast accuracy. So I could go in and select this offer. If you double click, you could go in and select a version. This one was way back in March, so I might want to go in there and check that early. This may be a version that I saved off early. Okay, and so I want to take a look at that. And I hit retrieve. If you enter information here for offer, don't enter it here. Okay, so this way you have this offer filter selection. Okay, and I could see my forecast version type was in season. There's my offer product ID, and there's my units, actual units, and projected units. Okay, so here in 3 columns, I could take a look and see. And if I sort this, I could see what my units were and then my actual units. So at the end, or at least near the end of an offer, you could run this It's important to go in and save this initial forecast, probably at start date, so you could go in there and take a look at a product level what the difference is between these. And then you could put this into Excel and you could use the formula that we spoke about. Okay, the other one we spoke about is this new one, which is this pub product compare. And so we could compare forecasts by week. I filtered this for a particular category, just so it doesn't take as long to run, though it comes up pretty quick. But this does give you a lot of information. It will give you the sales by week for whatever that saved version is, and also actual sales by week, and then your last published sales by week. So it takes a look at those 3 different versions. Come up in a minute. Okay, so here you can see the product ID, the SKU. There's a week begin date. Let me sort this by SKU. Okay, so for this product, so you can see your saved, comparable, and actual units. Let me get a better example that shows actual sales. Okay, so here's the SKU. This was the save units. So again, I may have saved this early in the offer. Comparable is the last published one. I just did this, so this usually would be different. And then these are our actual units. Okay, so this is good because you're able to see your actual sales by week for the life of the offer and compare that to whatever you saved. Okay, whatever that saved version is. And the last report is a SKU hot list by offer. Now, this will only give you the unit forecast. This is something you should run. And here you see I put in a particular offer ID. This is something you should run at drop date or mail date because it will give you the unit forecast, but it will also give you your inventory position. So this won't give you the 3 versions, but you could at least go back and see how was my inventory position. Okay, so here you have your unit forecast and you can see your on hand, on order, or expected receipts quantity. Okay, any questions before I go back to the presentation?
Yeah, nothing additional.
Okay. All right, Megan will go through best practices.
Thanks, Stuart. All right, so wrapping up with some best practices here. These are the steps that we recommend you do to impact and measure your forecast accuracy. So beginning with updating your macro, offer setup, publishing, through running reports. We're just offering you some tips for each of those screens, with that key step in the process being reviewing your product variants, which we encourage you to do on a regular basis. Okay, so thank you all for attending. Please feel free to reach out to your customer success consultant if you have any questions, or to our general email here. Our next webinar will be scheduled for August 28th, and we will be covering dynamic reports then. Thank you all for your time.